Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer. And this morning, as I was getting ready, I heard Spirit say you're a spiritual astrologer as well. So I'm going to throw that in the mix today because I want to talk about the total lunar eclipse that's happening on March 13th, 2025 at 11:54 p.m. Pacific time. Um, this eclipse is really important, and not just the event itself, but that its influence covers the next 6 months. And a full moon is an illumination. It is the brightest phase of the moon. And while I was meditating this morning, Spirit was showing me the opposition between the moon and the sun and was referring to it as the ego versus the emotions, the ego projecting itself onto the emotions and the emotions being overwhelmed by it. And I thought, what an interesting way to look at a full moon, offering us an illumination where our ego is eclipsing our truth on the inside, our emotional depth. So I was super inspired. All of a sudden, I have all these notes I did yesterday, and now I feel like this video is going to take a more interesting and spiritual take. So let's pull up the chart. Well, before we do, let's just talk about what an eclipse is, okay? Every year we have two eclipse seasons pretty much. And, a total lunar eclipse is a full moon eclipse where there is quote unquote an ending. I think that's really more of a human way of looking at it because the illumination brings a conclusion of some kind, but I don't know that everything has to end. It's just can bring you into a new chapter. And then the solar eclipses are called new beginnings. Now, yes, the sun gets a lot of credit for some good things, but sometimes new beginnings are really the sun is not really lighting the way. We're having to birth something through faith. So I think right now, as we have shifted into the new lunar axis, and the eclipses kind of follow the lunar axes. So here we're going to see this eclipse in Virgo. So it's going to focus in on the mind. And what houses the mind? The ego, or what the ego is housed within the mind. So here I'm like, well, when we think of the ego, what does it often do? It stokes our fears, our trepidations. It tells us we're not good enough. And when we're frustrated enough and we're low enough, it will tell us we're greater than this, but it never settles on something. Now, our emotional body, which represents our soul, the moon, is like, you always deserve something. Where will you point your mind's focus and trust what brings you joy? What brings you a feeling of purpose or fulfillment? And that is what I think is the key to this eclipse season. Because in the background, and not far away from the eclipse is Neptune, as it's about to go into Aries, the sign of self. Neptune is making a favorable aspect to Pluto and to Uranus. We're going to look at this. And Uranus rules rebellion from old structures that are antiquated. It demands genius. It also feels very lonely sometimes and very not really part of the pack. And it's not an easy place for Uranus to feel because Uranus is overthrowing the structure where the pack lives. And then there's Pluto addressing the deep psychological nature of this within Uranus's home, Aquarius. So let's pull up the chart and dig a little deeper. Okay, so we see here that the moon is in at the time of this chart, and I've left this in Placidus because I really prefer Placidus in so many ways, but a lot of my monthlies are based on whole sign. But I decided today to do something different because I think it's really powerful to see the moon opposing the fourth and fifth house. Okay, we're looking at the moon in Virgo at 23 degrees, uh, reflecting the sun. And right now, the sun is conjunct Saturn, Saturn in Pisces. Pisces rules history, Saturn rules history. Pisces rules feeling invisible. It rules madness, literally going insane. I mean, there's some very dark things about the sign of Pisces. And when the ego is stoked in a way where there is fear, it brings up that darkness. So I think that as the sun is reflecting onto the moon at this time at 23 degrees, the Aquarian degree, there's an opportunity to see in where we have had habits of the mind. Now look at the nodes. The south node is conjunct the sun, I'm sorry, the moon at 27 degrees in retrograde. So it's reviewing, and the 27th degree is the Gemini degree that rules the mind. So I think this is so, I see these weird intricacies and these weird layers. So as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking there is an illumination being offered to me in a way that can change my future when I recognize my ego, know how to traverse this muggle mind of mine because it's a necessary apparatus within the human experience. And then I allow my soul to truly be the light, the light that I follow. Because here, this is showing a habit of diminishing the emotions for the practicality and the public view of the 10th house in indifference for what is home and familiar. Pisces is the fourth house right now. So let me kind of say that a little bit different. I think like this eclipse is going to bring up for a lot of people where they have habitually been enslaved, the house of Virgo, to duty, to family, or to the family image, or to the family idea, or to what has been their traditions. And now the ego up against Saturn, meaning the sun, and Saturn representing repression and repression, limitation, obligation, responsibility, and history of that. You know, the challenging sides. When we're looking at an eclipse with this full moon, we are looking at what can illuminate the blocks, what's keeping me from where I want to go. And that's the opposition. So the ego being reflected onto the moon is saying that I have not listened to what's the truth of my heart. I've deferred to something else. I've either deferred to what I think is safe, or I've deferred to what other people, fourth and fifth house, because this is the family and this is the fifth house is the audience for your creation. And now there's going to become an ending to that. And that is supported by the sun making this favorable aspect to Mars that is ruled by or in Cancer. And the moon is the ruler of Cancer. Sorry, I got ahead of myself because Mars is technically in fall in Cancer. But here, this is Mars has to address its emotions, its ego. Mars is very egotistical and rules the self. And it's the sun is exalted inside of Aries. So, and Mars rules Aries. So I see these dominoes. We also see that this sun and Saturn are in a sextile to Uranus. Now, this is so powerful because this gives us an opportunity to really look where we can look to the future, see a vision of something that we are co-creating, being aware of the idea that Uranus rules the cosmic consciousness, that it rules, the networks that we hang out with and interact with. It rules social groups. Are we enslaved in some way in duty to something? And it could potentially be somewhere you don't feel visible, a group you don't feel visible to, and your sense of your mind telling you that this is what has to be. Now, let's look at the aspects of the moon. The moon is making a favorable aspect to Uranus. So, Uranus is a big player in this eclipse. And for me, it's saying that Over the next 6 months, there will be opportunities for revelations, for incorporations of ideas and concepts that have up until now potentially tethered you to a smaller version of yourself. The Virgo energy is the slave energy. It's where we go from the fifth house of pleasure and joy and high school and fun into the workforce, into where we have to make money for ourselves. And oftentimes, the human structure says to do something practical, something that it can see with its five senses or experience with its five senses. And the Pisces energy is like really trying to compel the sun on some level, is trying to compel a different story, being a leader of my own creativity and following my heart versus my duty. The fourth house is naturally ruled by the moon. And even though it's Pisces here, there's that synergy going on. And this is a potential of releasing a habit of thought, a habit of my own personal expectation that has up until now held me smaller than I really am. That's the way I want to put it. There is also, we see a conjunction between obviously the North Node and the Sun, but Neptune is in here. And Neptune is the dreamy, spiritual, creative, um, in some ways, very foggy and blurry. There's so much faith that is required with Neptune's energy. And Neptune is about at the end of the month, in just 2 short weeks barely, is going to move into Aries for the first time since 1862, I believe it is. So there's so much about this eclipse that will be influenced by Neptune and influenced by the sextile to and the trine to Uranus. This is an opportunity for you to look at, where does this take place in my chart? How will it relate to me? What areas of my life? Virgo is my sixth house. It's my house of work. And what I found, and it's also a house of health, I didn't even bring that up, the house of daily habits, daily thought habits, and how those daily thought habits influence your daily action habits. And Neptune in the final degrees of Pisces is giving us an opportunity to revisit the history that is the next building block for the new renovation of who and what you want to be, rather than trying to release something like a full moon can sometimes people want you to release, you do these big ceremonies. I think about incorporating it and transforming it into wisdom, because the outer planets all changing in 2025 are changing the landscape of how we roll as humans. And we're moving into air and fire, passion of thought, okay? And an acceleration of the density of earth and water that we've been experiencing as these planets were in, Capricorn and in Taurus, and obviously Neptune in its rulership. So when the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that Uranus is often referred to as the great awakener. And that's the unexpected things that take place that jar us out of our slumber, of our complacency. I think that this eclipse season is giving us an opportunity to actually experience this with more spiritual ease when we use intention, when we aren't trying to stand in evolution as if we're climbing a mountain, but rather awareness of the present moment and the choices that that has to offer. Because ultimately, that is your karma, is the choices that we make, and the choices that we make and how they interact with the co-creation of the universe. So when you're contemplating this eclipse on Thursday and you're thinking about, how do I want to harness this energy? I think it's best served sort of to look at the duality of the ego Is the ego represented here by the sun reflecting itself from Pisces? I feel invisible onto Virgo. I need to be this. I need to be these things for these people in my life. Saturn conjunct the sun. Or is there an opportunity to start to extract the wisdom that Saturn has really been demanding in building a strong connection with your soul's inner, your inner voice, your soul's yearnings, the bigger part of yourself. Start making that daily practice, daily focus, literally brick by brick. And in doing so, as the sun sits in conjunction with the ego of, I'm sorry, when Saturn sits in conjunction with the sun representing the ego, then we are excited about God's opportunities versus edging God out. And that's where the outer planets will start to support that, what used to be woo-woo vision of how to manifest on this material plane. It's so powerful right now, the things that are happening. And those of us that are living through this are literally living through a time when humanity is being prepared to enter the galactic community. Uranus, Pluto moving into Aquarius, Uranus moving into Gemini. It's going to be so fun and so foreign. That's the other thing that's interesting. Most people don't talk about that Pisces has Jupiter as a co-ruler, and Jupiter rules expansion. Jupiter rules foreign travel, foreign places. And here we can think of the sun in Jupiter's house as, traveling to foreign places within yourself and your soul, and transcending again these five senses and allowing what appears to be dreams and musings and imaginary things. The focus of that will bring them into the material, and you will be Spirit's divine messenger through your own creations and through your own physical experiences. So I hope you harness the energy of this eclipse. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you live in excitement for the future, as you know you're participating in it through your mind, through your focused thought, through your willingness to recognize, oh, there's the loop in my head. What do I want to replace that with? What's the new mantra? And then put that mantra in the present. I'm feeling great. I'm excited about the future. I know good things are happening to me. All right, that's it for me. Teri Hunter, your intuitive and spiritual astrologer. I think I'm going to have to put this on my YouTube channel banner. I hope you like, I hope you subscribe. I hope you'll come back. I have been under the weather the last week, but usually on Wednesdays between 4 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, I do tarot card readings based on your questions, and we get Spirit's advice so that you can manifest the things in your life that you want. So I hope you'll join me. And please, again, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you soon. Peace out.